A lot of people grew up playing sports: basketball, swimming, soccer. Where I'm from, Southern California, it seemed like almost everyone had their athletic pastime. For many kids and young adults, there are one or two sports that really stick with them for years or decades after they start playing. Some people get lost in golf or volleyball or chess. For me, I spent countless hours playing a video game. Hear me out. During traditional years of sport training, there are dozens of phrases you hear day in and day out.
Keep your eye on the ball.
Empty your mind. Be formless.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
No matter what skill level you're playing at, though, there is one term that coaches, parents, and players often bring up: the zone. Despite how many people discuss being in the zone, a lot of them actually struggle to define it. The best that most people can do is describe what it feels like or what they think it feels like to work or compete in this state of mind. I asked a friend of mine to describe what being in the zone meant to her. Here's what she said. "When I'm in the zone, I zero in on what I need to do and just focus on that. I tunnel vision so hard that I forget about much else." This is a relatable definition. Any college student can tell you that he or she needs to be in the zone during a final exam to avoid failing. But it doesn't stop at schools and sports. Metal musicians have been reported to experience deep feelings of being in the zone when practicing and performing. Office workers also report feeling many of the same symptoms that my friend has described in her quote. Professional basketball player Kobe Bryant gave a much more intricate answer in an interview. He described it like this: "When you get in that zone, it's just that supreme confidence that you know the ball is going in. Things just slow down. Everything just slows down. When that happens, you really just try not to focus on what's going on, because out there you could lose it in a second. Everything becomes one noise. You don't hear this or that. Everything's just one noise. You're not paying attention to one or the other. You're just staying right there. You get in the zone, you just kind of stay there. You become oblivious to everything that's going on. You don't think about your surroundings or what's going on with the crowd or your team. You're kind of locked in." These definitions are fine in common conversation. In fact, they're pretty good in the grand scheme of things. But academics have taken it one step further. It's important to note that what I've been calling the zone is actually a colloquial way to describe flow state. Flow state was proposed in the late 1980s by psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. In my opinion, this theory best falls into the bucket of positive psychology, which aims to bring people up from an average level of life satisfaction rather than solely focusing on those that fall below the average. Recently, however, flow has become one of the cornerstones of sports psychology. These two definitions hone in on two key concepts that are commonly associated with flow state. The first of these is a deep sense of unwavering concentration. You are purely in the moment, not subject to the usual distractions of daily life. Csikszentmihalyi discusses this in great detail in his book. Specifically, he states, "Flow is the way people describe their mind when consciousness is harmoniously ordered." Our textbook describes it as tremendous concentration, total lack of distractibility, and thoughts concerning only the activity at hand. It's like gym day for your brain, and your thoughts are experiencing muscle memory for whatever activity you're involved in. The second commonly referenced characteristic of flow state is a change in temporal perception. When you're experiencing true flow state, time seems to be going by extremely quickly. This is commonly reported in academic literature, but flow's influence on the perception of time may come in different forms based on the activity or the person. After all, Kobe Bryant did report feeling time slow down in his explanation. Arguably, the two most important aspects of flow theory that these quotes failed to hit on are 1. The difficulty of a task relative to your competence, and 2. Your locus of control. The first of these states that you can only really achieve flow state when the challenge presented by your opponent, assignment, or general task at hand is matched relatively close to your ability to complete that task. Essentially, if you try to take on the Golden State Warriors with your YMCA pickup team, you're not going to be able to get into flow state. Your abilities are not being matched by the skill of your opponent because they are so far above you. Interestingly, however, the Warriors aren't going to be able to enter flow state either, as their abilities aren't being tested because your level of play is so far below theirs. The second idea is someone's locus of control. In layman's terms, the concept states, if you believe that you have the ability to control your mental state, you can achieve flow state. If you don't believe that though, you won't be able to achieve flow state. Overall, flow theory can be broken into a few core concepts: deep concentration, low distractibility, changes in time perception, relative ability, and locus of control. At this point, you might be thinking, Liam, how does this relate to the love of video games that you talked about earlier? Well, as previously stated, flow does not just occur in sports. It has been seen and reported across a plethora of professions and hobbies. Writers, painters, gardeners, and basketball players all experience flow state when they are engaging in their craft. With this in mind, I'd like to see how well flow theory applies to the wonderful world of esports. Spoiler, it applies really well. Esports, if you aren't aware, are competitive video games. Because there are countless videos explaining what esports are, I'm going to only outline a few of the main points for the sake of making my argument. Side note, if you actually do want more detail on esports, a good place to start is Our Game, League of Legends, by Riot Games. The game was essentially built for the niche of esports, and they have kept this in mind since the game's release in 2009. Esports are essentially multiplayer video games that are designed to be highly replayable, more intricate, and generally more relatable to traditional sport than your average arcade game. You know, just with a lot less sweat. As someone that has not only been a fan of numerous esports for the better part of a decade, but someone that is currently working towards a career in esports, I think it's important to see whether or not traditional sports psychology theories can carry over to esports. So, going back to the components we outlined earlier, I would argue that all of them translate one-to-one to esports. The first 3 bullet points are fairly obvious if you've ever seen someone play a video game for hours on end. I know from personal experience with hundreds of different gamers that they often describe how much easier they find it to concentrate on a video game than most other activities. This is probably because video games are typically more fun than going to class or working out. Regardless, they concentrate a lot, often for hours on end, when playing esport-tailored video games like League of Legends, Overwatch, or Counter-Strike. Low distractibility and changes in time perception are pretty much tropes of gamers. They often get lost in their game, unable to be distracted unless seriously provoked. Sorry, Mom. This lack of distractibility is often coupled with the sense that time is flying by for a lot of gamers, especially those that are playing esport titles. I know from personal experience that I will sometimes find myself staring at the clock because I cannot believe that 5 or 6 hours have gone by in what felt like minutes. Funder himself references video games in his section of Csikszentmihalyi's theory. Perhaps you have seen an individual playing video games far into the night, seemingly oblivious to any distraction or the passage of time itself. That person is likely experiencing flow. Until this point, most of what I've talked about in my application of flow to esports is not actually exclusive to esports. The points I've made about gamers in relation to these first 3 points can be applied to a lot of different video games, including the huge catalog of games that don't fit the esports mold. That's fine, because esports are, first and foremost, video games. They're made for entertainment and profit. The last 2 points on this list are what make this video more about esports and less about video games in general. Relative ability is what gives esports their flair. When a professional team goes into a match, they're not just playing against any 5 players. They're playing against a hand-picked group of the top players that may or may not be better than them. Moreover, the games themselves are designed with relative ability in mind. They have ranking systems built in that tell you whether or not you're in the top 50, top 10, or top 1% of players in your region. When you go into a game, you're matched against players of the same skill level, so it's easy to start to fall into flow state. Compared to single-player adventure games with a main storyline, side missions, and a cast of characters you can talk to at will, esport titles are much more set up to enable and encourage flow state. The last point on this list is interesting because it actually has to do with the fact that, just like anyone else, professional esport players are people. There is little to nothing that truly sets them apart from anyone else, especially not their belief or disbelief in their own locus of control. I will say that, because all these players are trying to become the best at their respective game, they may be more likely to believe in theories that can benefit them. In conclusion, I believe Csikszentmihalyi's flow theory applies to esports because each of these 5 points can be fulfilled with how esports are structured. Video games tend to induce deep concentration, low distractibility, and changes in time perception. Moreover, esports specifically are almost always structured with relative ability in mind. Finally, because esport players are not intrinsically different than anyone else, having a locus of control is at least equally likely of occurring. However, this is all pretty much based on my own experience. There isn't a lot of data on gamers outside of the pointless yet ongoing research on whether or not video games cause violence.
They don't, by the way.
So I'd like to end this video by encouraging sports psychologists to take a look at the world of esports. Sure, there's a lot to take in at first, but I believe that there are endless research opportunities. Most obviously, the world of esports can serve as a new medium to test existing theories, such as Medved, Maides, and Gilovich's counterfactual thinking theory from 1995. So, psychologists of the world, I implore you all to give esports a shot. There could be fascinating theories just waiting to be discovered. Thanks for watching.